this video, I'm gonna help you figure out if you should live in the Upper West Side in Manhattan or not. Now, I always say that picking your neighborhood in New York City is probably one of the most important decisions that you're gonna make. And it really does make or break your experience here. So as a real estate agent, I tend to tell my clients that I think picking your neighborhood is honestly more important than the actual apartment home that you end up picking. Because most people in New York City don't spend a ton of time in their apartments. So they spend time in their neighborhood and being out and about in New York City. So it really does make or break your experience. So I never like to share my opinions much in these videos because I never want to sway people when they're making a decision. But I really do love the Upper West Side. It's probably one of my favorite neighborhoods in New York City. And I do think that there's a lot of pros to this neighborhood, but I'm gonna go over some of the pros and cons of the neighborhood in this video. Now, a lot of people do love this neighborhood because it definitely does have a neighborhood feel. So if you look at the Upper West Side on like a map in New York City, you would see that the neighborhood is actually very, very large. It's pretty rare for a neighborhood this large to have such a neighborhood feel, but somehow the Upper West Side really does. So if you know the Upper West Side well, you might realize that there's not a lot of people who work in the Upper West Side. So if you think about it, it's very, very residential. And of course, there's a few exceptions to the rules, but there's not a lot of commuters that come into this neighborhood. And because of that, it's typically people who live in the neighborhood or people who are visiting people who live in the neighborhood. So I definitely love how it has such a residential feel. But at the same time, for having such a local residential feel, there's a lot of really, really fun bars and restaurants in this neighborhood as well. So you kind of get that friendly kind of like community feel when you go to some of these bars and restaurants in the neighborhood. And if you do like having some like local bars and restaurants within walking distance, this is going to be a great neighborhood for you. Now, it's not a crazy nightlife scene, meaning like you're not going to get dressed up in like a little black dress or something and go out in this neighborhood. So a lot of you will know what I'm talking about when I say that. But at the same time, there definitely is a late night bar scene here. It's just more low key. But at the same time, it's a really, really great neighborhood to meet up with friends and have casual drinks. So this neighborhood is mostly made up of pre-war apartments, but there are a few new construction buildings as well, or newer construction buildings post-war. So now we're talking about like post-war. Now, why is that? So if we look back at the history of the city, I'm not gonna go too into history on you guys, but this neighborhood was always residential. So it was never a corporate neighborhood. So that means that most of these pre-war buildings were being built up in this neighborhood because it was always residential. So when the city started to develop in this time, they were building here in the Upper West Side and also in the Upper East Side as well. So that's why there's gonna be so many pre-war apartments here. Now, I don't want this to scare you away either if you're not interested in pre-war, because trust me, as a residential real estate agent, I have seen so many gorgeous, amazing pre-war apartments that have been renovated and updated throughout the years. Like some of my favorite homes that I've ever been in were pre-war apartments. And I'm the type of person who definitely lean towards post-war or new construction. So I don't want this to scare you away if you're interested in the neighborhood. I definitely think that you should look at both pre-war and post-war apartments and then decide exactly what is gonna be best for you. Now, the Upper West Side is actually near two different parks. A lot of people don't know this. So you have Central Park, and the Upper West Side is bordering Central Park on the west side. But then you also have Riverside Park, which is the Riverside Park, which is right off the Hudson River and off the Upper West Side. So being like wedged in between both of these parks is absolutely amazing because so Riverside Park specifically, of course, doesn't get as much love as Central Park because it's way smaller, but it's gorgeous because you're right on the waterfront. And over the past few years, they actually like redid parts of this park to make it so much nicer than it used to be. I never used to love spending time in Riverside Park, but ever since they started like redoing it over the past few years, I actually have been there a good amount of times and I absolutely love it. Like I specifically bike ride to Riverside Park and I don't live on the Upper West Side. So I just think it's a really, really nice waterfront park. And then when it comes to Central Park, if you lived in Central Park West, which is technically part of the Upper West Side, that is going to be some of the craziest views of Central Park you've ever seen. It's absolutely breathtaking. It's absolutely breathtaking if you're ever able to see the views from those apartments. It's one of my favorite views of Central Park, I would have to say. And these apartments are definitely gonna be very, very pricey because of that, but it's something that you really have to see. Being within walking distance of both of these parks, honestly, like I'm the type of person that I love to be able to spend time outdoors in New York City just because I think that it's something that, so as a New Yorker, I think it's something that you just appreciate so much more just because in New York City, you spend a lot of time inside, dining, working, and it's just so nice to be able to get out and go to a park. So in this neighborhood, you have both options. So if you live on the east side of the Upper West Side, you're able to get to Central Park real quick. And then if you live on the west side of the Upper West Side, then you can get to Riverside Park real quick. And either or, you could definitely walk to either park in anywhere in the neighborhood. It just might take you a little bit of time because it is a big neighborhood. Now, one thing I do want you guys to know, because this neighborhood is close to parks, this is a very rat-infested neighborhood. I'm going to warn you in advance. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be looking at apartments where rats are literally living in your unit. That's definitely not the case. But if you're on the streets of the Upper West Side, they will be there. You will see them. Trust me, you'll see them. because of two things. Now, this neighborhood is next to Central Park, and where do a lot of rats live? Central Park. There are so many rats in Central Park. And I always tell people to think about it. If you were a rat, wouldn't you want to live in Central Park? It's gorgeous. Like, I would love to live in Central Park if I was a rat. So like, I don't think people should be surprised that there are rats in Central Park. Two, so there's also a lot of dining establishments and fast casual places in the Upper West Side as well. So there's a lot of food. Central Park, plus a lot of food options, then rats are just gonna love the neighborhood because they can try to get some scraps. So it does make sense that there are a lot of rats here. And I don't just make this up or go by what I'm seeing on the streets. I actually review this document called, it's like a rat report that they actually release every year. And I only give you guys this information just because this was one of the top neighborhoods that was listed as rat infested, I would say. Now, I do spend a lot of time in the Upper West Side, and I would say that it wouldn't scare me away from the neighborhood at all. It's just something that you should be a little bit aware of, because there are some neighborhoods where you'll hardly ever see rats, but the Upper West Side is definitely not one of those neighborhoods. You will see them from time to time. So I hope this video helped you figure out if you should live in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Now, I would love to know, would you guys ever live in this neighborhood? Or if you've lived in this neighborhood, I would love to hear your stories in the comments, because I really do think it will help everybody in the community. As always, I love hearing from you guys.